Part 3, still working on the bazooka. When you glue the two surfaces together, you're going to have an excess of plastic ooze out of the seam line. And at the moment I'm pretty much trimming it and cleaning it, but unfortunately it's not completely closed together. There's still a seam line of where the two pieces meet all around this separate bazooka. So later on I'm going to have to fill that, but at the moment the imperfections made from the fusing of the two pieces together are being cleaned right now with my hobby knife. And on top of that, I probably didn't clean up the nubs and whatnot, because I could have done that when it's all together in one piece. A larger piece is easier to handle. More or less I'm going for a different technique. I'm going to put the glue on top of the seam line, and I'm going to sand it a bit to actually drag the plastic along off the piece and into the hole. So instead of using putty, this is a different alternative, but it does scar the plastic a bit, and you'd have to go back and clean it up. I prefer the putty method, but this is just to show another method that you can fill in seam lines on the cheap. And on top of that, I don't do this technique often, so sometimes I like to redo it as practice. It's always good to do things out of the ordinary. It doesn't remain wet for long, so you do small pieces with the cement and then you file it over. I'm not too sure what I'm doing here. Okay. Some of the areas that technique didn't 100% fill in the seam lines. So obviously at this stage I'm using putty to fix the rest. This time round I'm putting excess around the barrel, and I'm going to file it down, because the problem when you're filing a round surface is if you file too much in a concentrated area, it's going to become flat and it's going to look weird when you paint it. So when in a round area, overcompensate the putty, file it down so it retains its original shape. If you file it down to become flat and you wish to fix it, it's generally a huge pain in the ass. So this is just a little technique to keep in mind when you're gluing things together like gun barrels or whatnot. The actual gluing and sanding over technique does work. I'm not too sure why I abandoned it. Who knows? The putty stage, much like other stage, is also a very long stage, but not unenjoyable. It's like I said before, it can get a little tricky when you're putting around detail.
I'll sit, hang on. Doing something delicate. Doing something delicate.
Fuck. Okay, I forgot to mute this. Someone's yelling me for some reason, who knows. It proves how much attention I pay to the footage. And another mistake I made, there's an actual attachment to go to the end of that bazooka. I don't know what happened to that. I don't know why I lost it. I do put some epoxy putty on the end of that because... No, there's already epoxy putty at the end of that. I'm just neatening it up with the 1-part putty. Now it's dried. I probably left it for a good hour to dry. This putty dries amazingly fast. I think you can leave it up to half an hour minimally. It's just pretty much getting rid of the extra texture or the extra mass, and then I'm going to come back and wet sand it as well as I wet sand a lot of other things. Having a good arsenal of files when you get serious about this hobby is excellent. Have several pin files and a few larger files if you don't want to be filing a large surface forever with a pin file. It's nice to have a bastard file on hand, but We used it to bypass the safety on one of the studio's ceramic kilns. I don't think I'm ever going to see that again, so I'm in the market for a new Bastard file. Fortunately, if the putty's too wet and you file it, you can get a lot of the dust of the putty stuck in the file, and it's going to set and dry in the actual grit of the file, and that's quite troublesome to clean out. So either you're going to regularly soak your files in thinner and clean them out with tissue, or the best idea is to wait until your putty's well and truly dry before you start attacking it with a file. Just a bit of advice. The putty's also dry on my base where I was applied it a few days ago, and yep, filing that down as well. By the looks of it, there's a few little gouges, so a few more passes of putty may be required, but in smaller areas, so yeah, it's pretty trendy. You can see I'm wet puttying here because the actual residue of the putty is being stretched across the piece, and it's going to dry into a dust. When you're using a lot of products and compounds on a model kit, I know a lot of people like to wash their styrene or their resin kits before they start building. I don't really generally bother unless it's resin, but before I put my primer coat on, I always like to wash my pieces. It's because of my grotty fingers all over the pieces. This residue, sometimes I might eat while I model, which is possibly a really bad habit, but I like to be on the safe side. I think I've got some dry sandpaper there. I should be phasing that out fairly soon. You see, it gets clogged very quick with a few passes of the sandpaper, so it's always good to dish out a little extra money for that wet and dry, because you can use it about 12 times over than to the dry stuff. Once you clog up the grip with the sandpaper, it just becomes a nice polishing compound cloth, which you don't quite want. At this stage, I'm going to glue the two pieces with regular Tamiya cement. I've had some bad luck with this. It's actually split a couple of times, so I had to peg it and super glue it. If you're going to be building the Kotobukiya base, and if you're going to be gluing it together with cement, either use something like plastic weld or something stronger than Tamiya cement, because this shit's not quite pure fine styrene. It's some crap, or watered down styrene, I would say. Yeah, I paid a good 1,000 yen for this thing, and second-rate styrene kind of pissed me off a tiny bit. It's glued into place and leveled up. I'm just checking with the third wall that it's nice and straight. It's always good to double check when it's set. It's going to be set in stone, which not, it's going to break off later. But yeah, it's a good example when you're gluing something together. Here's some, I think, half millimeter styrene sheet. Gonna cut some of this to make myself a door for my third wall. This would be a brief tutorial on scratch building with styrene, which isn't too bad. I've been planning to do a video on that. More or less, it's actually thinner than paper, or thin as paper, so you just mark what you want to cut out with a felt tip marker or something similar to a Gundam marker. I actually don't care much for Gundam markers, they dry out too easily. And once you mark it out with a ruler and your marker, generally just cut it with plain paper scissors. Thicker styrene is a lot harder to cut with paper scissors, so you might want to get something a little heavy duty, but then when you start sawing and whatnot, it does get difficult. A lot of scratch build people do have trouble with cutting thick styrene, but it's just the name of the game. There's some good techniques out there, but I just try to get by, and if you make a mess of it, you can always clean up afterwards. Cut more than what you need. If you cut too less, you can't use the part, can you?